What if I told you if you were a butcher, a chicken farmer, a horse trainer, a vegetable farmer, that you could be eligible to come to Canada, work for a year, and be eligible for permanent residency through the Agri-Food Pilot? Any occupation that is listed under the Agri-Food Pilot program that falls within the agriculture-based industries or the food-based industry makes you eligible for this program. Today, we're going to talk about the Agri-Food Pilot as part of our every single Canadian immigration program from A to Z. And we're starting with A, the Agri-Food Pilot. So stay tuned while we find out about this program and seeing if you or somebody you know may be eligible for permanent residency through this program. All right, we're going to jump right into the Agri-Food Program here. So let's just start off by just talking about what is this program anyway. So the aim is to help to address the labor needs of Canada agriculture and food sector. Now, whenever you see the word pilot in any immigration program, it means that it is a temporary program. They're just testing it out to see if it works. And if it does work, then they'll make it into a permanent program. But right now, this is a pilot program, which means that it has an end date. So this one is going to be ending on the 14th of May in 2025. And thereafter, maybe they'll assess the program to see if they will extend the pilot or if they will convert it into a permanent program. Now, these jobs are usually non-seasonal, right? So it's not like an apple picker or any kind of agriculture or food-based occupation that is just based on if it's summer or if it's winter. It has to be like a non-seasonal all year round job in those kind of industries. And it is a pathway to permanent residency, check. And there is a limit, though, of about 2,750 applicants each year, which means that compared to the vast number of applicants that they are accepting for all of the immigration programs in Canada, which is about 500,000, this is a little bit slim. However, the opportunity is still there. And even if you miss the cutoff for 1 year, you can apply for the intake for the following year. Applications are by a first come, first serve basis. So the earlier you apply, the better. So what do you need now to apply for this program? Well, let's jump into that. So you have to have worked in Canada for at least a year. Now, I found this a little bit confusing, but now that I know that it is a pathway to permanent residency, as is most of the other programs, like the programs through Express Entry or any other kind of program, this one here kind of is the step towards permanent residency, which means that before this step, you got to do a couple of things. So first, you have to work in Canada or have had worked in Canada in a full-time non-seasonal job that is one of the jobs that fall under the Agri-Food Pilot as an eligible occupation or in an eligible industry. And we're going to talk about that in a second. You have to meet the language requirements. This is typical for any immigration program, and you have to meet or exceed the education requirements. Typical, you have to have settlement funds. If applicable, is just because if you're already working in Canada, you typically do not have to show proof of funds if you already are in a permanent job in Canada. And then if you're in Canada, you have to have maintained your status as a worker, whether you're on a open work permit or on a closed work permit. So these are the things that you need to have check in order to qualify for this program. Now, what are the eligible industries? And I think that this is where the rubber hits the road to really determine if you are eligible or not. So the occupations or the industries are in meat production. They are in greenhouse, nursery, or floriculture. I looked up floriculture. It's basically the farm, like you are working on pretty flowers, really. And animal production, except for aquaculture, which is the fish animals. So if you're doing cattle ranching, hog, pig farming, poultry or egg production, sheep and goat farming, and other animal production, excluding water animals. Now these are just the industries, okay? So that's the general category under which occupations will fall. Now we're going to go into the subcategory with the occupation, because You can't say, well, I'm part of the meat production industry. You have to have an occupation that falls under this industry that matches the NOC code. And we're going to go into the NOC code bit later on. But right now, let's just talk about the occupations that make you eligible for this program. So we have a butcher. We have meat cutters and fishmongers. Interesting. Industrial butchers and meat cutters, agricultural service contractors, and farm supervisors. Now, there are some words on here that's what the heck is an agricultural service contractor, though, where we have to go a little bit deeper, and we're going to go into an example to find out what kind of jobs fall under this. You also can be a specialized livestock worker or farm machinery operator, livestock laborer in food and beverage processing. That's interesting. You can also fall under occupations such as agricultural service contractors. Again, weird term that unless you go to the NOC code to find out what the heck that is. What is an agriculture service contractor, though? So we're going to go into that soon, but this list here is a good place to start and then drill down by job title. So here are some more harvesting laborers, livestock laborers, and then we have the ones that fall under animal production, animal service contractors. So I kind of went into a little bit more detail with these ones to give you an example of these are, and this list is not limited. There's more. So a poultry farm foreman or forewoman, a vegetable farm foreman or forewoman, a farm supervisor, livestock breeding contractor, or if you're a specialized livestock or farm operating machinery. We looked at this on the previous. And of course, this list looks very similar to the last list because there are jobs that fall within these occupations that are separate and apart, depending on whether it is animal production or plant production. So this looks very much like the last one. And now, what on earth is a specialized livestock worker? So we're going to jump into a live example now of how to figure out if your occupation falls, your actual job or job title falls within this occupation. So we're going to take note of this NOC code, okay? 84120. Keep it in your mind. Don't forget it. Don't forget it. 84120, okay? And then we're going to switch over to the NOC website. Now, this is, you can literally just type in NOC code Canada or find your NOC code, and it will take you to the page that looks exactly like this. There's two different searches that you can talk about. So you can search by title or you can search by NOC code. So we're going to go by NOC code, and we know that the code that we're looking for is 84120. Did you remember it? Okay. And here's where you see example titles of the type of occupations that fall under specialized livestock worker and machine. Now, this is just an example of the titles. To get the full list, you want to click index of titles, and then you're going to see the list of all of the job titles that could possibly fall under this category. Now, sometimes job titles don't necessarily match your this list. So maybe you're not called a cowhand, whatever that is, or a chick sexer. But what's important is that your duties, your main duties and employment requirements are in alignment with this list here for you to claim this NOC code. So this is how you kind of drill down further to see if your occupation falls under any one of these eligible occupations under the Agri-Food Program. So again, go to NOC, take the code, drill down by all indexed job titles to see if your own is on that list. Now, that is just the eligible occupations and industries for this program. So if you fall under this list, check. This next step is to assess your individual eligibility. So boom, your job title, your occupation is eligible. What's next? We're going to flip over here to just assess what is next for you in terms of your personal eligibility. So you must have worked in Canada and have gained at least 1 year non-seasonal full-time paid work experience. Anything that's not paid, anything that's volunteer, does not qualify. Anything that is like only off season and on season based on the weather, not qualify. Anything that's part-time does not qualify. And the time that you gain can be across, just accumulatively across across 3 years. So 1 year across 3 years. So it could be like 6 months, 6 months, 6 months, full-time, non-seasonal, gained across 3 years. Now, of course, this kind of work experience needs to have been part of the list that we just mentioned. So you have to fall under one of those NOC codes in the work experience that you had. Then the work experience must be supported by a labor market impact assessment. So a labor market impact assessment is basically the government giving an employer permission to hire foreign workers because the employer cannot find anybody to fill the job locally. So the employer would have had to have the permission, issued you a labor market impact assessment based job offer, and then you would have come, worked, and then you would qualify. Now, if you came to Canada under an open work permit, so when you come here for a labor market impact assessment, LMIA job offer, you get a closed work permit, which means that you can only work in that for that employer. You are tied to that employer on a closed work permit. You cannot quit and then just go to another employer because your work permit is limited to that employer. However, if you came to Canada on an open work permit, this means that you can work with any kind of employer in any occupation. You're free to do mostly what you want to do on an open work permit. That is not what this program is tied to. If you came here, I'll share you again. If you came here and you worked on an open work permit, this work experience that makes you qualified or eligible for the Agri-Food Pilot Program does not count as work experience gained in Canada. So you cannot be here on an open work permit and be eligible for this program. Next is the job offer. So one, this that we spoke about previously is your past work experience. So in the last 3 years, you need to have had this past check. That's your next checkpoint. This coming one now is what, now bringing it back to the present, is that in order to also qualify for this program, you need to have a valid job offer, or a genuine job offer is what they call it, because it's from a legitimate company that has followed the rules and all these things, and they're giving you a legitimate job offer. I don't see anywhere in the literature saying that this new job offer needs to be supported by LMIA. I just see that the job offer needs to be in the eligible occupation list. So that's the list of things that we just spoke about, right? It needs to be full-time, at least minimum 30 hours paid. It needs to be non-seasonal, so consistent and regularly scheduled paid employment. It needs to be a permanent position and has no set end date. So it's not like a contract or anything. It's just like, you work for us until death do we part. For unionized positions, so that's part, if your position is part of like a union, farmers union or workers union, it needs to be according. What you get paid needs to be in accordance with the fair wages across the board relative to that union. And if it's non-unionized, meaning not a part of a union, then your wages, what you must be paid, must be basically the median wage that is usually shown or reflected on Job Bank, which is kind of like the median across Canada or across the industry based on the job position. And we know that Quebec is a special province, and most immigration rules, allowances, everything is usually except for Quebec. So the job offer is in Canada, but not in Quebec. And you're going to find this as a repeated element throughout most immigration programs. Now, once you've checked that mark, have your work experience in the past, and now you have a job offer when you do transition into Canada as a permanent resident. The next thing in terms of what you need to do as an individual is to meet the language requirements. And this is typical for all immigration programs. Even if you're from an English speaking country, whether you're English speaking or French speaking, you have to prove your competence in this language. And so you need to have fulfilled that through doing a test, an English or French test. So your English or French test scores must be at minimum the Canadian language benchmark of a level 4. Now I looked this up, and level 4 is basically the lowest possible score on a language test. So you either get level 4 or you fail, which means that and I only bring that up because it means that basically it's the lowest possible mark. So the language requirements aren't very high or very hard to meet compared to other immigration programs. So here's a quick table on, usually people are more familiar with the IELTS, International English Language Testing System, which is like just an international body that you can have your English skills assessed through, and then they give the test results to immigration. So you do the general training test, and so if you do the IELTS, the scores, a Canadian language benchmark level 4 is literally the last one. This is the whole table, and it goes up to 10. So I say that just to put it into perspective with other language test scores or the highest score. Basically, you must just be able to communicate basic English, not even perfect. Now, the next thing is your education requirements. So you would have had to complete high school in order to be eligible for this. And how they assess your high school completion is that you would have had to have your high school certificate evaluated by a body such as World Education Services. There are other organizations that can do it, but this is the most commonly used one, or the most well-known. World Education Services can validate your diploma and say, okay, yes, this is a legit high school level education or secondary school level education. So once you meet that, check. Now you think about your funds. Now, if you are already in Canada, you don't need to show any proof of funds. We're in Canada and working. Okay, working in Canada. And this is common for a lot of immigration programs. Even express entry, you don't necessarily need to show proof of funds if you are in a permanent job in Canada. And if you don't have a job, or say, for instance, your contract is about to expire or something, you need to show proof of funds based on your family size. Now, this calculation of funds based on family size is whether or not your family is going to come with you to Canada or not. It doesn't matter if they're not coming with you. You still have to show proof of funds for anybody that you are financially responsible for. So like if you have a spouse or if you have children and they are financially dependent on you, you need to show that you have enough money to support them and you, no matter where in the world they are. So usually, here's the table, and this is typical for some of these programs. It's like, okay, if it's just you, it's 13,000 Canadian. If it's you and another person, 17,000, 21,000, and it goes all the way up to 36,000 depending on your family size. So if you have enough pickney, you have to count them all up and show that you can support all of them no matter where you are. And those are the minimum requirements for Canadian dollars as of April 2023. Now, this will be, of course, updated over time, when, especially considering inflation, that this will probably go up. So I do find that this is a little bit on the high side for this program, especially compared to like the Atlantic Immigration Program, where the proof of funds is not this high. And we're going to get into Atlantic Immigration Program next in our A series. But that's how much money you need to show. Okay. So in summary, okay, one, you would have had to have had a job offer supported by an LMIA and have worked in Canada for a minimum of 1 year full-time, non-seasonal paid work. Okay, so step 1, have the LMIA. Step 2, come to Canada and work. Step 3 is to get a full-time job offer in Canada. So I'm assuming that the job offer that you had over here, if they extend it to give you like a full-time job offer, then it could potentially qualify. I think I'm going to call a friend, call your immigration consultant. And once you have a valid job offer, you meet the language requirements and education requirements, you then go ahead using the Agri-Food Pilot Program to apply for permanent residency in Canada. Bam, 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 bam. Now, once you apply for permanent residency through the program, you can apply to extend your current work permit if you have one. If you don't have one, you can apply to come and work while you wait for your application to be approved. And you can apply for open work permits for your family members to come and join you in Canada under certain conditions. And these conditions are going to be based on whether the type of job that you're in. So if you're in a tier 2 or tier 3, tier 4 or tier 5 job, then they'll say, well, if you're in tier 2 or tier 3, your family can come and work once your application is in. If you are tier 4 or tier 5, your family can only come, or you can only apply for work permits for them if you have or acknowledgement of receipt of your permanent residency application. So the tiers are really just ranking the job titles based on responsibility. So TEER stands for training, education, experience, and responsibility. And there's another video that you can watch to understand the NOC code system and the tier system. I'll link the video here so that you can watch it after this to kind of get more in depth on the NOC code and tier positions, because that's going to be important for knowing whether the occupation that you're in even qualifies for this program. Now, that is it in terms of how the Agri-Food Pilot Program works. Now, what's next for you? If you saw an occupation on here that you think you're in Canada, or that you think you can get into in Canada, I want to invite you to come play the secret word game. So secret word game, you're going to go to astoldbycanadianimmigrants.com/event, and you're going to put the secret word in the form as along with your information, and I will send you an invitation to join one of our Canadian Dreamers Club coaching calls to answer some of the questions that may have come up for you when you watch this video. Today's secret word is agri-food for the Agri-Food Pilot Program. So this is a secret word here, agri-food. Go to this link right here, put it in and submit, and you will get an extension or an invitation to jump into one of our live coaching calls where you get to ask us questions, you get to talk with our immigration consultant, and you get to learn more about this program, because this information is general information that is basically for the person with an average, normal, non-special profile. Sometimes there are things that will make your application be unique, like if you are self-employed, or if you have some kind of a job offer, but then it was like part-time over here, full-time here. How does that work? There's things that will make things not so typical for you on your application. So it's always best to get together with people who know what they're talking about, know what to do, who can assess your profile and determine whether or not you should pursue this program, or if you do want to pursue it, what they recommend. So definitely get together with us. Put your information in astoldbycanadianimmigrants.com/event. The secret word today is agri-food, and that is the Agri-Food Pilot Program. Now, I'm not going to get into the actual permanent residency application, because that is something that, like I said, is going to be based on your specific profile. So I don't want to give you general information for the actual application. What is important is understanding what are the steps to even get to that point. Submitting the permanent residency application is the last step. Literally, you need to have come to Canada and worked, get an LMIA, come to Canada, work in Canada, then qualify, get a job offer, meet the language requirements, meet the education requirements, and then you apply for permanent residency. So these are all the steps that lead up to that. Once you are able to check, that the application is not necessarily the easiest step, but it's kind of like a done deal and you just need to get help. I would recommend getting help for this program in terms of submitting your application, because there are the specifics of the categories and the job types, and also making sure that your job offer that you have qualifies, and also the work experience that you had qualifies. Now, I said that I would rate all of these programs on a scale of 1 to 5. Now, having gone through this program, the scale of 1 to 5 is like, okay, for the average person with a non-special case, this program seems pretty in the middle in terms of straightforward and kind of odd. I would rank it as a 3 because of the past work experience that you have, plus the job offer that you have to have in order to qualify for the program. No, it's a 3 is in between difficult and easy. The occupations themselves, I think, in agriculture and food are occupations that there are, I think, quite a bit of employers who are able to issue LMIAs, because that is an industry that is understaffed in Canada, and that is why they have programs like this, because they need people to work in these things. And it's possible that Canadians don't want to do this job, so nobody's applying to these jobs, and so it may be filled by immigrants. Once you come to Canada through this program and you have permanent residency, my understanding and knowledge of permanent residency is that as a permanent resident, you have full mobility rights to go where you want, when you want, and do whatever you please. Now, I don't believe that you will be tied to anybody or anything once you go through this program, but get together with an immigration consultant. We have our in-house immigration consultant, MacBean Immigration Consultants, who is also goes live with us inside the Canadian Dreamers Club. And you can get together with us, and then you can get 7% off your immigration consultancy fees as a club member. And if you're not a club member, you can get 5% off your Canadian immigration consultancy fees. Now, it's definitely recommended for this program. It is not 100% straightforward. That is why I gave it a score 3, but I think that because there's a demand and a need, that this program is definitely one that has jobs available in order for you to get the job. One thing you need to keep in mind is that there's a limit of 2,750. And if you think about all the people in the whole world, that's not a lot of people. So if you are trying to get through for this program or think that you are eligible, remember, it's first come, first serve. January the 1st is when you want to get your application in and through, so that you have a chance for getting into that 2,750 count. This has been the Agri-Food Pilot Program. Remember, drop your secret word, Agri-Food, over on my website. Get into a coaching call, get together with us to see if we can help to get you on your way. Now is the time. It's October now to prepare for January. I have enjoyed sharing this program with you. I've learned a lot. I will see you in the next video. If this was helpful for you, please hit the like button and subscribe, notification bell. This is video number 1 of this series, and we're going to go all the way to Z. Okay, there's no Z. I think it stops at T. But there are at least 18 programs in here. So stay tuned, because a program that you may be eligible for or you are interested in is coming up next in this series. I will see you in the next video.